in general, they don't treat mental health as a safe space in the military. So going back to us being Black, I think that a lot of the service members, or when they get out, they are eagerly seeking for help now because they didn't have a safe space to do it then. And then when you talk about MST, military sexual trauma, a lot of them, male or female, aren't really wanting to talk about it at all.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Legacy Speaks. I am so excited to have another amazing conversation with another dope clinician. Her name is Alyssa Milton, and she is the founder of Alternative Directions Counseling and Consulting. And we're going to talk a little bit about veterans and mental health. And so, Alyssa, can you please let the people know who you are and a little bit about your practice?
Thank you, Sierra, for having me here today. Again, my name is Alyssa Milton. I am a licensed mental health counselor registered in the state of Florida, and recently a licensed professional counselor also registered in the state of Georgia. I also am a qualified clinical supervisor for Florida. Anyone that is working on building up or becoming a therapist in the Florida area, I supervise those interns as well. I currently work for the U.S. Department of the Veteran Affairs, so the VA, actually. I am a licensed therapist there. And then I have my own private practice in counseling where I'm serving more minorities, not veterans, of course, called Alternative Directions Counseling and Consulting. So I am thankful to be here today in order to speak with you all about what's going on in the world of mental health.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I got so excited because, I'm a fellow Floridian. I was born and raised in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, graduated from the University of South Florida, Tampa, all the way, and just happened to make my way.
Tampa, okay.
Yeah, just happened to make my way all the way to Atlanta. So I'm just super excited to have this conversation because I'm like, oh, shout out to all the licensed mental health counselors out there in Florida. But yes, Alyssa, I always like to start off, especially when I'm talking to a fellow clinician, what brought you into the mental health field? What inspired your journey?
Funny story, actually, and it started with veterans. So as you mentioned, Tampa, I was actually born in Tampa on the Air Force Base, MacDill Air Force Base. So my dad was in the Army, actually. We were stationed in Little Rock, Arkansas at the time. So this was a little bit right after 9/11. So a lot of the airmen and just service members were getting deployed. One of the service members came back and actually shot himself behind one of our houses. So our house kind of was with the woods. So it was plenty of space for him to do whatever he needed to do without anyone really noticing. But it happened during the school year. And at that time, I was in a psychology class. So I always had the thought of like, okay, I want to be like a psychologist or something one day, not really sure what realm I was going to get into. But after I found out what kind of happened, I'm like, well, why didn't anybody help him? Like, was there any services available to help him? Like someone should have been there. So I've always made it my duty to say one day I am going to serve and help veterans in mental health because I don't want to see or lose another service member to suicide. So ever since then, I've kind of worked my way, building myself up to get into the VA. Now that didn't happen until 2018, but I've always kind of wanted to work with veterans in the mental health realm. So that's kind of prompted me to where I am today.
Oh, absolutely love that story. What are some common stigmas that we find when it comes to servicing our service members? I often find that immediately when somebody is working with a veteran, they always default to the PTSD diagnosis. And so we understand that there are a wide number of different things that our service members endure, whether they're experiencing combat or maybe even deployment or reintegration and whatnot. So what are some things that we need to be mindful of, especially when it comes to the mental health of our veterans and service members, so to speak?
Yes. I would just say be mindful that a lot of these service members went in at the age of 18, 17, even for that. So a lot of them, when you talk about the reintegration, a lot of them don't know what it is like to be out on their own and even get services done for themselves. Because once you sign up to be in the military, everything is taken care of for you pretty much. So giving them time and space, but also willing to help, the willingness to help them, guide them through life, kind of as they, as they received once they joined. So I would say that. Also, just being aware that some, due to them experiencing PTSD or whatever, substance abuse is very common within the not mental health, but the military field as well. They already celebrate everything with alcohol. That's number one. So you come out and you're trying to figure out life, and you may just be thrown out. You may not have a house to live in, family that's supportive, because you probably left your family because they weren't supportive. So substance abuse is very common as well. And one of the other ones I've seen pretty much is being aware of that outside of just PTSD, there's a lot of abuse of power that goes on too.
Mhm.
So being mindful of that, because you could remind a lot of the veterans that of kind of what they went through in the military, because you're in this position of power of serving and trying to help them. But a lot of them have already experienced some things where they don't even want to talk to you. So there is a lot of resistance going on that I've experienced, but just being aware of their whole entire chart. I would just say that. Know what they've been through from start to finish is very, very important.
Oh, thank you so much for touching on that, because immediately I thought about a client that I was previously working on. I worked in a substance abuse space for about 5 or 6 years now. And what I found with the veterans that I did come across, like you mentioned, a lot of them went into the military in their teenage, young adult years, and they spent their entire life, or maybe even like a good portion of their life within the military. And so they found their identity rooted in that. And we can see what that looks like, especially when it comes to substance abuse and like the military, maybe even dealing with some codependency, or also struggling, like you mentioned, with the abuse factor, trust issues because of long distance relationships and whatnot. And then it's like what I find, especially for individuals who are entering into the realm of recovery, it's like this double reintegration. They're trying to establish themselves as somebody who is newly sober, but also trying to reestablish themselves as a civilian as well.
Correct. Yes, you're absolutely right. I know, like, one of the struggles, well, not the struggles, but one of the things I'm seeing now is we're getting a lot of younger individuals. So we're getting like, those are like 25, 24, 25 just getting out too. So even their mindset, they feel as though they're a lot further than their peers right now, just with the way they think and the way they do things, a little bit more organized and structured, because that's what the military teaches you. And they're kind of struggling with becoming friends with people or meeting people. They just say, we don't get along, or I don't relate to a lot of people, because their lives have changed too. So
yes, definitely. And even when we were talking about that, I was just like, the reintegration process of somebody who is going back to a home that they left, right? So especially being Black in the military, like you're leaving areas like Chicago or Detroit, or maybe even like South Florida, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, or whatever the case may be, where it for quote unquote the hood, the urban communities and whatnot. And sometimes it's a struggle coming back because you can't relate, or your city has changed so much. And so can you speak to being Black in the military and what that even looks like? How does one protect one's mental health as a service member, and as a service member who is a person of color?
One of the things I've noticed is that a lot of them don't get treatment while they're in the military. They don't feel like it's a safe space. And I'm not even just going to say with Black, but in general, they don't treat mental health as a safe space in the military. So going back to us being Black, I think that a lot of the service members, or when they get out, they are eagerly seeking for help now, because they didn't have a safe space to do it then. And then when you talk about MST, military sexual trauma, a lot of them, male or female, aren't really wanting to talk about it at all. You know, and so they do get out, and they're finally like, okay, well, I think I can start sharing it, but then they want a provider that looks just like them. And there's not many of us out here that are working either for the VA or just in the community in general. There's not many Black providers as especially in Florida. Let me go back to Florida because there wasn't a lot.
Yeah.
Central Florida specifically. So in the VA, you're having to spread out to community care and stuff like that. That way you're meeting different providers that aren't, of course, in the VA, but again, they still may not look like you. So as you mentioned, trust earlier, that is a big thing, because people want a safe space to come to and share some of the worst times that they've experienced in their life and how to overcome that. So that's one of the challenges I've seen, being in the military or being Black in the military. Also, when it comes to power, because when we think about the military, who do we usually see? Men, right? And then the race that we usually see is white.
Mhm.
So they feel somewhat degraded a little bit, some of the things that they have to put up with. And they don't want to lose rank. They want to make rank. You know, that's very big to deal with in the military, is making rank and getting higher up and being up there with your peers. But sometimes it's a challenge to get up there because you kind of have to kiss somebody behind to do that, and you didn't grow up that way. So now you're battling between, you know, your career and your values, which is a challenge too.
Ooh,
So
yeah.
even just going back to reintegration, they struggle with that of, you know, they coming out into the civilian world trying to find a job, and there's like, well, I don't get along with anybody. I don't get along with my supervisor. They trying to do this and it brings you back to the military, and I don't want to be dealing with all of that.
Yeah.
Oh, I get it. I get it. It's different. It's different. So that, when it all goes back to that, you know, that power, honestly.
Yes, absolutely. I was thinking of when you said the values, immediately I thought about acceptance commitment therapy and how we often do values clarification. And I could see how there could be some type of internal struggle because for basic training and on, you're taught these values for whatever branch you're in, whether it's in the
Correct.
Army, the Navy, the Air Force. And these values become things that you live by. They serve as motivation. They serve as
Right.
like your whole existence. However, sometimes when you feel oppressed by an overall system because you're working for the government, we see that there's like this internal conflict because it's just like, these are my core values, and yet this is my job, this is my career. How do I mitigate that? How do I find a way to be able to still be a service to the position that I'm in while also like tending to my own needs? And the military has a way of like telling you to say, hey, put yourself last because your team comes first or your country comes first, and so on and so forth. So I could definitely see that whole concept unfold.
Now, as you mentioned that, you know, not even just being a service member, but working for the government and working for the VA. And because we treat the VA just like the military, we try to make it as simple as possible. We try to have it resonate with what they just left, so it won't be such a difficult, you know, change. But me, just as a woman working in the VA, I knew that, yes, I wanted to work with veterans, but I knew that veterans weren't the only people I wanted to serve, because me being a Black woman, right? Like, there's more people in this community that I'm trying to serve, and a lot of us aren't going to therapy. So how can I work that out? So I started my own practice back in 2019, actually, in Miami. I was living in Miami because I worked at the VA down there in Miami, and got my practice going. And I mean, I tell you what, I don't know, so many young people were crying out for help, and I had never seen that before. Never. Like, just young individuals like, you know what, I heard about doing therapy and people have always told me about it, but my family is not really wanting me to do it, or they think I should pray about it, because we all heard that, you know, why don't you just pray your problems off? I wanted to be that face. I wanted to be the voice. I wanted to be advocating for my community. So that's what prompted Alternative Directions. Been working pretty much, started out with adolescents, children and adolescents, grew more into young adults. So I have this thing where I call Millennial Therapy, because I am a millennial, you know, so I try to stay in that realm. Like, I'm up to date with things. I know the music, I know the fashion, I know the talk, I know all of that. So that helps too when it comes to my clients, where they don't feel like, you know, they have this old lady where she's doing therapy and she's not really understanding what I'm talking about. And I say that because I've been to a therapist that was much older than me, and I couldn't relate. I couldn't. So as a therapist, I want to be, and I know I'm going to get older one day. And so my, you know, my demographics may change, of course, but for now I'm focusing on the African American culture, the Black culture, the Hispanic culture in my practice is what I
Yes.
focus on.
Oh, Alyssa, please, because girl, I feel like every time I get on like an interview with another clinician who is within the same age bracket, I'm just like, yes, because we really are redefining what therapy looks like. I think
Yes.
oftentimes people think that you go to this old white person and then you lay on the couch and you just talk about all your problems. But just like the name of your practice, Alternative Directions, you're showing Black people or just people of color in general that there are just alternative ways of seeking mental and emotional wellness. And it's
Correct.
okay to look at things differently. It's okay to challenge what your mom or your grandmother or your grandparents taught you. It's okay to explore things for yourself. And so thank you so much for providing that segue, because we can have these systems tell us what is supposed to happen, but how will we know what works for us if we don't actually step out and try? So
that's true. That's very true. And I think that's what, honestly, that was the name, the reason for the name is that we know that our parents or whoever brought us up into this world have showed us different ways about life. And then we get into the world without them and we realize, okay, well, maybe this way of thinking just wasn't it. Maybe it was maybe it worked best for you to, take care of us for the moment, but now I have my own life and I don't want to do that anymore because it hasn't really been effective in my own personal life with growing up or maybe in college or in other relationships with people. So you start to, make these changes or learn about different ways that you can kind of function throughout life. So that's what I like to provide with the clients that I serve, even for children too, because, a lot of these kids, we think they need, they need therapy, but they just need some discipline in the home. And so with therapy with kids, you need to involve the parents. And I think, I enjoy doing that now. That became too much for me at one point. And I passed that on to some interns that I eventually got on, because for me, it's like, okay, I'm, working with children, that's two people in one, that's two clients in one, instead of just the client or just the child. So definitely working on identifying alternative motives or alternative ideas to how we're going to function in our own lives. Because honestly, we're living for us. We're here for us. How are we going to do?
Yes, definitely. So one, I do want to give you your flowers while you're here, because my listeners know I do not work with children. I think the youngest the youngest that I work with is probably 13. And even then, I'm just like, whoo, because we already know when we're working with minors, it's like, yeah, we got you, but we also got your family dynamics and trying to educate your family. And you never really know what kind of parent you're going to get. So,
for sure. Yeah.
So can you speak to that, especially as a clinical supervisor? What advice would you give to individuals who are trying to work with a specific client, but they're also trying to reframe and restructure how they show up within their family dynamic as well? It kind of goes back to the topic of identity. How do we teach clients to work on the I so that we can work on the we?
You have to involve, and I guess it just depends on the age range too, because I mean, with younger kids, they're just there because their parents told them to, but they don't really know what they're there for or what they've actually done to be there. But I think with like teenagers, you mentioned 13, allowing the child to be an individual. So I make sure that in the beginning with sessions, especially with my interns, I tell them, speak with the parent and the child together, right? Find out why is the reason that the parent reached out to you to say, I want therapy for my child, and allow your child or allow that child then to provide a rebuttal. Do you agree with what the parent said, that that's why you're here? Do you recognize any behaviors? And then at that point, you let the parent go. And now the session is for you and you and the kids, right? So you grow to learn the individual, the child that you're working with. But now you're learning about some things about this child that just the parents don't know. So that can be a challenge too. And it's not anything that necessarily, like when it comes to substance abuse, we know that we're not allowed to tell the parents that their child is smoking weed. We're not allowed to tell that. But sometimes the parents already have an idea that they're doing it anyway, but you can't confirm or deny that. But still allowing the parent periodically to come and engage and tell you what's going on with their child, and maybe allow the child to present some ideas or thoughts or feelings that they have towards the parent. And of course, just again, bringing it back in one setting of, this is what's going on. This is a family situation, not necessarily saying that the child is the problem, because it's also the parent as well.
Yes. Yes. It's so interesting that you take that perspective, because immediately when I thought about that is helping the family recognize that there needs to be some level of mutual respect.
Yes.
Obviously, yes, the parent has a role and the child has a role. However, when we take an approach of the authoritarian perspective or authoritative perspective, you have the opportunity to build some type of collaboration between the child and the parent. And that's life-changing within itself, because they're actually listening to one another rather than seeing each other as this enemy, or seeing each other as maybe this threat to your individuality.
Yeah. Now, I don't personally see children anymore just for that reason, because it just can become a lot. So I've been working with my interns periodically. I have an intern that is learning more about working with children. She wasn't a fan at first either. You know, it takes time, but I think it also has been rewarding for me too, because I've also worked in DJJ. So working in Department of Juvenile Justice also gives you another perspective on children that are on the legal side of the world too, and their criminal behaviors. And then you learn about their parents too. Some of them don't even have family. And that's probably half of the reason why they're in there some of the time. And then, or maybe some of the parents are engaging in illegal activities themselves. So definitely when you're working with children, you have to look at the whole family dynamics of things and not just the child.
Definitely. Yes. So thank you so much for all of your expertise that you provided. And even with the concept of dynamics, I always ask this question for any clinician who steps up on the Legacy Speaks platform. As you know, the podcast is called Legacy Speaks. And so, Alyssa, what would you like your legacy to speak about you?
I would just say I've always told like my dad this. My dad will ask me, "What you did today?" I said, "I saved a life." You know, that is my motto. I saved a life. However I did it. If I just had to sit and be a listening ear, I probably still saved a life. So I want my legacy to be that I've been able to at least help one person throughout my career. Maybe many, but I want to continue to save lives. So that is my motto.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Because healing is so transformative. We can
Yeah.
save one person and we end up saving all the lives connected to that one person. So thank you for being so exemplary in that area. Alyssa, please let the people know where they can find you and how they can connect to you.
All righty. So if you need a therapist or any other therapy in Florida or Georgia, my email or look over my website is www.alternativedirections. CC stands for counseling consulting at .com. Sorry, I was about to give you my email. So again, it's www.alternativedirections.com. My email is info at alternativedirectionscc.com. I can also be reached by phone. I am usually in session, but you can usually just text me or call me if you want to do that, or email is great as well. But the phone number is 407-616-2194. I am currently accepting clients in Florida still and Georgia as well. Still building up my Georgia network because I haven't been here that long, but accepting all major insurances, self-pay, HSS, whatever you need, I am here for it.
Yes. And if you guys can't connect to her, please make sure that you are emailing Legacy SPKS. That way we can be able to connect you with her. The whole purpose of these interviews is to showcase all the amazing work that Black clinicians are doing. We are out here. There's no excuse for y'all to say that y'all can't find us, okay? Because we are out here doing amazing things.
Exactly.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, Alyssa Milton, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Of course. Of course.
Thank you.
Yes. And y'all, please definitely stay connected via Legacy SPKS on everything. Please make sure that you're checking out the website at legacyspks.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on all streaming platforms, whether it's Spotify, Apple, or maybe even the other thing that you have on your phone. Whatever it is, just leave a review. All right, y'all, definitely stay connected. And thank you so much for your time. Until next time.